In pain but with pride, Grenfell is remembered a year on. The bereaved, the helpers, friends and the famous all gathered in the shadow of the tower block. A church service too to remember the 72 who died.
Those who we have physically lost will never, ever, ever be forgotten.
In other news this lunchtime, 4,600 jobs go at Rolls-Royce. Middle managers and backroom staff bear the brunt. And it's almost game time. The World Cup gets underway in Russia.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Alistair Stewart at Grenfell Tower.
Good afternoon. From grieving mothers, babes in arms, to the aristocracy of entertainment. Hundreds gathered here to remember the 72 who died in the Grenfell Tower block fire, Britain's worst since the Second World War. There was a 72-second silence, soul singing, wreath laying, and much holding of hands and hugging. Some, with no connection beyond their care, came to show their respects. Many bore their personal loss with dignity, others with raw emotion. There was a service too, an attempt the organisers said to heal the wounds. We'll reflect on the losses, the memories and the dignity of a remarkable community and a nation seeking to share their loss. Paul Davis has the day's events.
Survivors, families and friends gathered in the shadow of the tower that became a grave to remember those they lost that dreadful night 12 months ago. "72 seconds silence, a second for every life." They remembered too at special services in churches alongside the tower. At Fire Brigade headquarters they shared a loss they tried but were unable to prevent.
A minute's silence, colleagues.
Parliamentary business was paused out of respect. Royal business too. The Queen and the Duchess of Sussex remembering Grenfell in Chester. The commemorations began much earlier. The shell of the tower illuminated in green at the same time that flames were lighting this skyline a year ago. Other buildings also bathed in the colour that's become associated with the tower. Even the lights on the London Eye switched to green. Along with Downing Street, still dealing with the aftermath and the issues it has revealed. Through today, there are multiple events of remembrance, opportunities for people to join their families in marking the first anniversary of an event that continues to reverberate in society.
Never, ever, ever again can people die in a preventable fire, and all of those who live in the surrounding area can be so traumatised by the pain of what they saw that night and what they carry in their hearts now as a consequence.
Celebrities like Adele and the rapper Stormzy, who've supported the Grenfell cause, joining the crowd for the symbolic release of white doves into the West London sky. Paul Davis, ITV News.
If there's one thing that is not in question here, it's how this community has rallied round, both in the hours and days after the fire, but also in the months since. I'm joined now by the Reverend Mike Long from Notting Hill Methodist Church and Ziad Kred, who organises monthly silent marches around the tower. Mike, it all began for you with a phone call.
Oh, indeed. About exactly a year ago, rung up in the middle of the night to say Grenfell Tower was on fire, and it feels that life has never been the same since.
And within those first hours, you and your ministry became almost overwhelmed, not only by the emotion of what had happened, but by the offers of help and equipment and stuff.
Indeed, as with almost every centre here locally, we were incredibly overwhelmed both with the need, the distress, the generosity and the support of the local community. And that support is still, I have to say, still very palpable and overwhelming even today.
Palpable and overwhelming in the sense that a year on, you've just organised the 12th March every day to remember the date upon which this happened.
Correct.
Why?
It's a sign of unity, it's a time for us to mourn. At a time where we felt voiceless, it was the best way for us to come together, and rather than be heard, it allowed us to be felt as a community. I mean, we're so diverse in regards to culture and faith here, and, you know, to give everybody an option to come together and to pay their respects in a way that they feel comfortable, it was the best thing to do. And it's created power for us, it's created unity, and it's really allowed us to be together and form our bonds. It also gives us something to do together on the 14th as well. Mental health is a big concern in the area at the moment, and leaving people at home alone on the night of the 14th is something that we never wanted to happen. So, you know, we had to make sure that there was something for us to gather and come together and just, I guess, to let the world know how peaceful and how united we are, and that's the message that we want to spread to everyone, to be honest.
There's no barrier of faith between you two.
No, not at all. The marches have been hugely helpful for the community, as indeed the moving ceremony that we've just been part of, and so many people have witnessed. One word I heard that many people were saying was how cathartic it was for so many people who've been intensely involved, aside from, of course, those most directly affected, such as the bereaved families and the survivors, and how it's helped to bring us even closer together. And I felt it was very powerful, very moving, and extraordinarily helpful for the community as a whole.
One of the other extraordinary things is that there are still demands being made by this community about housing, about rehousing and the rest of it. But on that one day each month, is that almost suspended while it's something about the heart and the soul that is to the fore?
I think the vocal aspect of it is most definitely suspended due to the walk being silent. So the vocal aspect, but the pain and the grief is deeper than words can describe. So, I mean, the call for justice and the call for change in regards to housing in the area is always going to be there. And I think that's a driving force for people who are not just from the community, who understand the need for change, who tend to come and join us. And like I said, it's not vocal, but the feelings and the hurt and the pain and the need for change is still very much there. And I guess that's why we reach out to everyone across the country to come and join us. Everyone's welcome to come.
Talking about it, and a thought from you, Mike, and then finally from you, talking about the country coming together. I was standing down there watching Stormzy, Adele, the Duke and Duchess of Kent, and a mother with a green scarf just holding her baby on her own. Yeah. It was truly remarkable.
It is, and that's the wonderful thing about our community, and perhaps it's a sign of what our society can be at its best in the midst of very difficult and tragic circumstances. And I hope that as a nation we will cling to this and show how indeed people of all different kind of backgrounds can be united in common causes.
Finally, an odd word, but a success today?
It has been a success. To be honest, the last year in regards from a community aspect has been a success. In regards to the official responses, again, as everyone's aware, we're still facing struggles. But from a community aspect, the last year has been growth and successful, and we'll continue uniting and we'll continue growing together.
Ziad and Mike, thank you both very much for finding time for us today. Thank you. As well as the 72 who died, there are so many more whose lives have changed forever because of what happened here a year ago. There are those like Nabil who've lost loved ones, the survivors whose homes were destroyed and lives torn apart, and those from the wider community who know things will never be the same again. Martha Fairley's been hearing how those worst affected are feeling 1 year on.
Clary Mendy lost two of her cousins in the Grenfell fire. Mary Mendy and her daughter Khadija Say, who was an emerging young artist, shared a flat on the 20th floor of the tower.
My cousin Mary, she was like my sister, in the name of all the dead people from the tower. That's what keeps me going. and motivates me to pursue justice. Really, first we need the truth, then accountability, then will come the justice and the restitution.
Since their deaths, she has been campaigning, using her grief to try to bring about change.
I'm pursuing justice rather than dwelling in anger. I'm putting things together. I'm converting that anger into a creative force for positive change.
Ines and Tiago Alves were at home with their parents Miguel and Fatima when the fire broke out. They all escaped from their flat, but lost everything.
What we saw, what we heard, what we smelt, what we felt. At the end of the day, these things are emotions that are difficult to comprehend now.
That was the only time I actually saw my parents cry, was the morning of the fire. Obviously, they had just lost everything they had built over the past 25 years.
Anything that we could ever treasure and cherish, not materialistically but sentimentally, was gone in pretty much a couple of hours.
It will take many months and years for those who survived to come to terms with what they lived through. Natasha Elcock was one of the last to be rescued, along with her 6-year-old daughter and boyfriend, from their 11th floor flat.
When you see it in black and white, the time I actually officially came out, or we officially came out, and the fact that I was the third from last house to be rescued that night, it really has hit home how lucky I am to be here.
Later in the programme, we'll be at a school just 100 yards from here, hearing how the children are working through their grief.
There's a bit of sadness for the people that have lost their lives, but there's a bit of happiness because all the staff and teachers are supporting us no matter what.
But first, let's take a look at the rest of the day's news. The engineering firm Rolls-Royce has announced that it's cutting more than 4,600 jobs, with the majority coming from the UK workforce. Companies trying to cut costs by another £400 million a year. Ben Chapman is at its site in Derby. And Ben, lots of the losses are expected to come from right there.
That's right, and it is office workers rather than the engineering staff who are likely to be affected by this. This is a huge employer here in Derby. That's 16,000 people who work for Rolls-Royce in this city, and it's expected that the majority of those 4,500 job losses will take place here on this enormous campus, because that is where most of the administrative and the middle management roles are based. Now, the company says its current management structure is too complex. There's a lot of duplication. It needs to be simplified and made more efficient. This is a company which has had a rocky few years, and its chief executive says that these cuts are vital if the company is going to stay competitive. And in the last hour, he's been speaking to our business editor, Joel Hills.
Well, if we look at what we're actually announcing in terms of job reductions, then they're concentrated in the management and corporate support functions. So we've actually been growing the number of people that are deployed on making components and assembling engines. At the direct level, we've been ramping up our capability over the last several years to service that great market position that we've enjoyed. But we have a very overcomplicated management system and heavy layers of corporate support staff, so not very efficient as a business, and it's those areas that we need to simplify and make fit for the future.
Can you connect with the impact that this will have on people in Derby in particular?
Oh, indeed. I mean, this is a very tough decision for us because, you know, people in Derby are incredibly proud of Rolls-Royce. Many of them have worked for Rolls-Royce for a long time. Their parents, even their grandparents, have worked for Rolls-Royce. And we are, you know, acutely aware of the strong link between Rolls-Royce and Derby.
Now, last year, the Unite union secured a deal with Rolls-Royce to protect some 7,000 frontline engineering jobs, but the back office jobs being affected today aren't covered by that agreement. The union said today that Rolls-Royce needed to be careful not to cut too deep and too fast. Doing so, it said, could have a dire impact on the local community here who depend so much on this company. But what Rolls-Royce has said is that the timetable for this is that something like a third of these jobs will have to go before the end of this year.
Ben, thank you. The government's confirmed that it is going to relax immigration rules to allow the NHS to recruit more staff. Foreign doctors and nurses will be excluded from the government's visa cap, which was set by Theresa May when the Prime Minister was the Home Secretary. Storm Hector is making its way across the UK with blustery showers and gusts of up to 70 miles an hour, bringing down trees and causing travel disruption to parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Forecasters say this kind of stormy weather is quite unusual for this time of year. And as we saw earlier in the programme, the Duchess of Sussex is on her first official royal visit without her husband Prince Harry, accompanying his grandmother, the Queen, on a trip to Cheshire today. Meghan spent the night with her new grandmother-in-law as the pair travelled to the event on the luxury Royal Sleeper train. Now, in just over 2 hours' time, the wait is over and the World Cup finally kicks off. Russia versus Saudi Arabia is the first game. But before that, the opening ceremony featuring a certain Robbie Williams. Emma Murphy is in Moscow for us. So, Emma, nearly there?
We really are very close to that whistle for sure, Alistair. Just over 2 hours and 15 minutes. And take a look at the atmosphere behind me. Fans from all over the world gathering here for the first match. But of course, before Russia and Saudi Arabia actually kick off, there is the opening ceremony. And in that opening ceremony, there will be performances from Robbie Williams, from a young Russian singer, and also an appearance by Ronaldo. Earlier, Robbie Williams was asked to explain how he felt about taking part in such a significant ceremony.
It's been a boyhood dream to play here on one of the teams, and if I can't play here on one of the teams, then to be given the honour of opening the whole thing feels incredible.
So that incredible honour falls to Robbie Williams, and clearly it is something that he's wanted to do for years as a die-hard football fan. But, you know, let's look ahead to what's going to be taking place here in Russia over the next 32 days. We've got 32 teams, 64 games taking place in 11 cities, 12 different stadiums, over 1,800 miles. And people are in really good spirits. Not everybody believes that they're going to win, but, you know, just take a look. These are people who are here to really enjoy the football. And the first game, that one between Russia and Saudi Arabia, it may not be kind of top billing in terms of the stature of the teams, but they're full of passion and they know that they're probably not going to get back here for the final. So they're going to really play their hearts out and enjoy their part in the first game of this tournament.
Emma, thank you. And that opening ceremony Emma was talking about, and indeed Russia versus Saudi Arabia, all live on ITV with coverage beginning at 2:30 and the kick-off 4 p.m. Now, we return to events here, where people have been marking a year since the Grenfell Tower tragedy. A 72-second silence was held at the base of the tower and around the country. A service of remembrance too for those 72 who died. And overnight, tower blocks and famous London landmarks were lit up in green, the colour of the Grenfell movement. Finally, amongst the horror of Grenfell, perhaps the most striking thing has been how many children were affected. As well as the 18 who died in the tower, hundreds more have had their lives indelibly marked by the tragedy, and none more so than the children of St Francis of Assisi Primary School, less than 100 yards from here. Faye Barker's been hearing how they are remembering their friends, lost, and helping each other through their grief.
remembering through music is just one way the children at this school can reflect on the shock of Grenfell. They helped write this song, just one way to absorb the scale of what happened.
I like singing, and usually when I sing, it always cheers me up when I sing happy songs. Our grief is slowly going away, but it's still in us.
There's a bit of sadness for the people that have lost their lives, but there's a bit of happiness because all the staff and teachers are supporting us no matter what.
They can see Grenfell Tower from the playground, and they remember the ones they knew and lost.
5-year-old Isaac Paulos was one of them. He and former pupil Jessica Ramirez now remembered in a special garden.
I read a book.
I read a book.
My friends invited me to play when I felt alone.
8 families from the school lived in the tower, and all children are encouraged to talk about their grief and also learn that life goes on.
Has our grief disappeared? No. It's still there. But those times of success, those times of enjoyment enable us to cope that little bit better.
We have a duty to make sure that our children move on from our school as really robust and great citizens who will go on and do a lot of good in the world.
A lot of good has already gone on here, the children showing extraordinary courage and resilience.
Dear God, please help the people who lived in Grenfell to be strong and have courage. Help the people who lost their homes and loved ones. Dear Lord, thank you for helping me, my mum and my sister come out safely. Amen.
Standing as one here in the silence, help me believe.
And that is it from Grenfell Tower this lunchtime. Mary Nightingale will be here with the ITV News at 6:30. But for now, from all of us, a very good afternoon to you. Bye-bye.